What if the one person you trust most with your well-being becomes the source of your demise?
Really gets you thinking, huh?
It is. And that's the unsettling story we're diving into today, the case of Hillary Brown.
A 33-year-old woman who tragically died after having some cosmetic procedures done.
Performed by, of all people, her husband.
Her husband, a board-certified plastic surgeon.
And for this deep dive, we're pulling from a true crime podcast episode.
It really digs into this complex case.
It lays out the whole thing: love, deceit.
High-stakes world of cosmetic surgery, the whole 9 yards.
And what I think is so interesting about this case is it goes beyond just the surface, you know?
Right.
Like, we see a lot of these cosmetic surgery cases, and they focus on beauty and youth.
Especially for our listeners, that 45 to 60-year-old range.
Yeah, totally.
This is something that's becoming more and more common. And, I can understand that, right? The desire to kind of turn back the clock. But this case goes beyond that.
It does.
It delves into the dark side, right?
Right.
The potential for exploitation.
For sure.
Blurring of those lines when you have these personal relationships intersecting with medical practice.
They're so tricky. I mean, you would think, oh, it's my husband. He's going to take the best care of me.
Right. It seems ideal on the surface, but it really can muddy the waters, cloud judgment, and can compromise, the objectivity that's so crucial in medicine.
Totally, totally. So let's start by just setting the scene. What was the life that Hillary and Ben Brown, her husband, what did their life look like?
So, at least from the outside, they seem to have it all, right? The happy marriage,
Perfect.
beautiful blended family, successful practice, oceanfront home, luxury.
The dream.
The dream.
But as we always say, looks can be deceiving.
Right, that picture-perfect facade.
It's never what it seems.
It's never what it seems. It really wasn't in this case either.
So what was going on behind the scenes?
Well, there were cracks in the foundation, right? You had these police visits, a potential suicide attempt by Hillary.
Oh, geez.
And then there were accounts of Ben's behavior. People were saying that he was controlling, erratic, and there were just these, whispers of discord from people who knew them. So very different picture than what they were presenting to the public.
Totally different.
Yeah.
And this is why those details are so important to pay attention to.
Right.
Because it challenges that initial, oh, they were a happy couple.
Right. It really makes you think about what the true dynamic between them was.
Totally, yeah. Was it just a love story gone wrong? Or was it something more?
Exactly.
So in the podcast, they mentioned some details that really highlight this discrepancy, I think, between their public image and then what was happening behind closed doors.
Right.
Ben, he would call Hillary his little alien.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That is a strange term of endearment.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound very endearing.
Yeah, a little detaching, right? Like she was more of an object than a partner.
Yeah, just creepy.
Yeah, a little bit.
And then, to make things even more unsettling, Hillary's family described Ben as a Charles Manson type.
Wow, so obviously they had deep concerns about Ben's character.
Honestly, yeah.
And his relationship with Hillary.
So we have these totally conflicting narratives here.
Yeah.
It's not a simple story.
Yeah. It goes beyond, maybe just a botched surgery.
Yeah, it's layers.
We have a troubled relationship, a husband with a questionable reputation, and then the wife who tragically loses her life.
Right. And then when you add to this the accounts of two former patients of Ben's, it gets even more complex.
Right.
These former patients allege that he performed unauthorized procedures on them while they were under anesthesia.
So this is where the ethics really come into play.
It's a huge violation.
Big time. You can't perform any medical procedure without informed consent.
It's a huge violation of trust.
Absolutely.
So in particular, these patients claimed that Ben had performed Brazilian butt lifts on them without their knowledge or consent.
While they were under for other procedures.
Yeah, and it resulted in permanent injuries.
That's a shocking allegation.
Yeah, I mean, if true, it really speaks to just a blatant disregard for boundaries and patient safety. And it just makes you think, well, if he was willing to do this to other patients...
what could he be capable of doing to his own wife?
Exactly.
Makes you wonder.
And then on top of that, there are also these malpractice lawsuits that had been filed against Ben's practice. One patient claimed that he used foreign materials in her breast reconstruction surgery without her consent.
So disturbing.
So disturbing, yeah.
Potentially dangerous, too.
And all of this together paints this troubling picture.
Yeah.
Of his professional practices and his judgment.
It makes you question his commitment to patient well-being.
Yeah, yeah. definitely. So let's talk about the day Hillary died.
Okay.
She had gone in for a few procedures, right?
Right. Double arm liposuction, abdominal scar revision, lip injections, and an ear adjustment.
So pretty common, right?
Yeah, relatively common.
I mean, they still carry risks, obviously.
But they're commonly performed.
Totally. But then things took a really, really dark turn when, during the surgery, Hillary went into cardiac arrest.
A life-threatening condition requires immediate expert care.
For sure. But here's the thing. The details surrounding what happened are full of inconsistencies.
And really suspicious circumstances.
Yeah. So these inconsistencies, they raise a ton of red flags.
They do.
You know, it really seems like something might have gone very wrong during that surgery.
Definitely worth a closer look.
Yeah. And, you know, the actions that Ben took, the decisions he made leading up to her cardiac arrest are just really questionable.
Right.
So, for example, witnesses said that Hillary was actually allowed to prep her own IV bags. Which is just, it's not typical.
Not typical at all.
No. I mean, why would a patient be handling their own medications, especially before a serious surgery?
Especially before a surgery, yeah.
Yeah. It seems like a huge risk.
Definitely a potential breach of protocols.
And it gets worse. Witnesses said that Ben injected undiluted lidocaine into Hillary's face.
So lidocaine's a local anesthetic, right?
Yeah.
But using it undiluted, especially in the face...
Potentially dangerous?
Extremely dangerous.
Especially in excessive amounts. You know, it can lead to cardiac arrest.
Makes you question his judgment, right? His understanding of the risks involved.
Exactly. And this is a pattern we're seeing.
It is.
With the IV bags, now this.
Right.
It's like he was either being negligent or reckless.
Yeah. It's a little bit of both, it seems like.
Yeah, or both.
Potentially.
Yeah, definitely. And then there's the 911 call. It was delayed.
Yeah, that's a big one.
A lot of time was lost before they called for help, which, you know, in a cardiac arrest situation, every second counts.
Huge red flag for me. A 20-minute delay for a patient in cardiac arrest. And you've got medical professionals right there.
I know. It's almost as if they were trying to downplay what was happening.
Or cover up a mistake.
Exactly.
It definitely makes you wonder what the motivation was for that delay.
Totally. And then you add in what some of the employees said who were there that day.
Right.
They said that Ben, he insisted on trying to revive Hillary himself.
Even when asked about calling 911.
Yeah. And one employee even said they heard Ben say, wait, when someone asked about calling for help.
It's like he wanted to handle it all on his own.
It is.
Maybe to avoid, you know, scrutiny from outside.
It's hard to imagine why a doctor, her husband no less, would hesitate to call for help.
Yeah. It's a major red flag. The natural instinct is to call for backup immediately.
Exactly. Especially when someone's life is on the line.
Totally.
So the official cause of death, they determined it was fatal levels of lidocaine.
The same anesthetic he injected into her face.
Right. Undiluted. And that brings us to the big question, was this an accident or was there something more going on?
I mean, the fact that it was a medication he administered definitely raises suspicion.
Huge red flag.
The investigators are going to be looking closely at that. You know, was the dosage appropriate? Was it given correctly? Were any rules broken?
And here's where it gets even more disturbing. This wasn't the first time Hillary overdosed under Ben's care.
Wait.
Yeah. A former employee said that Hillary had overdosed during a brow lift.
With Ben?
Yeah, Ben was doing the procedure.
This isn't looking good for him. It really points to a pattern of potential negligence.
Or recklessness, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And the employee, she remembered that Ben had given Hillary higher doses of medication than usual for that brow lift.
And he called her his little alien.
Yeah.
It's strange.
It's creepy.
It is.
The whole thing, the way he treated her, it's just off.
It really does make you wonder. And the previous overdose, the weird comments, everything about that surgery.
It's a really disturbing picture.
It needs to be fully investigated.
Yeah, for sure. So after a long investigation, they did end up charging Ben with homicide.
Specifically, manslaughter by culpable negligence.
So they're basically saying that Ben's actions or inaction led to her death.
And that his negligence was criminal.
That his carelessness led to Hillary's death. But Ben, he says he's innocent.
He's saying he followed all the rules.
Yeah, and that Hillary's death was a tragic accident.
Well, we have to remember he's innocent until proven guilty. The legal system has to run its course.
Right. It's a long process. Proving negligence in a medical malpractice case It's not easy.
It's tough, especially when the defendant is a doctor, someone with a lot of experience. They have a lot of resources, expert witnesses.
Exactly. So another big development in this case was the Florida Department of Health. They investigated Ben's practice.
And what did they find?
Well, it wasn't good. It revealed a pattern of some pretty concerning practices. It wasn't just limited to Hillary's case.
What do you mean?
They actually found probable cause to take away his medical license.
Wow.
They said he was a danger to the public.
They don't do that lightly.
Not at all.
So what did they find?
Their report is pretty shocking. They talked about the operating room. Unsanitary conditions.
Oh, wow.
Staff members were taking controlled substances from unlocked cabinets.
No way.
And there were even instances where Hillary was doing laser treatments on patients.
Without a license?
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, how is this going on for so long?
I know, right?
It's terrifying to think how many other patients might have been hurt.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize, we really need more oversight in the medical field.
We have to hold these people accountable. We trust them with our lives.
Exactly. The podcast also brought up this other thing Ben was doing, having his patients sign these arbitration agreements.
Before any procedures.
Yeah. So basically, they were waiving their right to a jury trial if something went wrong.
Oh, wow.
Any disputes would have to go through private arbitration.
So that seems like a way to protect himself.
It does. Yeah. Avoid those big payouts you can get from a jury.
Totally.
Arbitration, it's not as transparent.
Yeah.
It can really favor the person with more money and power, which is usually the doctor.
Makes sense.
So let's get back to the main question here. Did Ben intentionally kill Hillary, or was it just a horrible accident?
That's what the legal system is going to have to figure out, and it's not an easy question.
It's not. So in the podcast, they talk about 3 main theories about why Ben might have done what he did.
Okay, let's hear them.
So the first one is accidental panic.
So he makes a mistake, freaks out, tries to cover it up.
Exactly.
It's possible, given his track record. I mean, he clearly wasn't always following the rules.
Right.
So maybe the fear of getting caught, losing everything, it made him do something irrational.
Makes sense. The second theory is opportunity.
What do you mean?
Well, their marriage wasn't perfect, and there were some hints that Hillary might have wanted to leave him.
So maybe he saw this as his chance to get out?
Exactly.
So we're talking premeditation here.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
The third theory is financial gain.
Ah, the classic motive. Life insurance. Avoiding lawsuits.
Yep. And the podcast pointed out some things Ben did after Hillary died that kind of support this, like that text he sent to her dad about the life insurance policy and how quickly he tried to sell off her stuff.
It does make you think.
It does. Now, the podcast host threw in a fourth theory, the affair, but there's really not much to back that up.
Right, we have to stick to the facts here.
Exactly. But the podcast host, she had her own theory that I found really interesting.
Oh, what was that?
She thinks that Ben's main motivation was actually those malpractice lawsuits.
Interesting.
Like he was afraid of them. He knew they were coming.
He was all about the money.
He was. And he was willing to cut corners, break rules to protect his money.
So he saw Hillary's death as a way out.
Yeah, like he could get the life insurance money, and maybe that would help him financially.
Dark?
It is.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes sense.
It does fit with what we know about him. But again, these are all just theories. The prosecution has to prove this stuff in court.
They do. And until then, Ben is innocent until proven guilty.
Right. We can't forget that.
Okay, so Ben's trial, it's still pending.
So we don't know if he's guilty or innocent yet.
Right. But regardless of what happens in court, this whole thing has had such a huge impact.
On her family, of course.
Of course.
But on the community as a whole.
Yeah.
And the medical profession.
I mean, this case has brought up so many issues.
It has. Patient safety.
Medical ethics.
The need for more transparency in healthcare.
Big time. It's like a wake-up call, you know?
Absolutely. We can't just blindly trust our doctors.
No, we can't. And Hillary's family, they've been amazing. They've turned their grief into something positive.
Right. They're pushing for legislation.
Yeah, Hillary's Law.
To stop doctors from operating on their own family members.
Which makes sense. There's just too much conflict of interest there.
You can't be objective when it's your spouse on the table.
Exactly.
So it's really tragic what happened to Hillary.
It is.
But her family is trying to make sure it doesn't happen again.
And that's incredible. They're fighting for change.
They are.
It's a real testament to their strength.
It is.
You know, this case has also made me think about malpractice lawsuits.
Yeah, it's a whole other can of worms.
Right. It's supposed to be a way for people to get justice if a doctor screws up.
But it's not always easy.
No, it's a long, complicated process. And then you have these arbitration agreements that Ben was making people sign.
That's a real problem.
It is. Patients are basically giving up their right to a trial.
And they don't always understand what they're signing.
No, they don't.
It's like the system is rigged against them.
It feels that way sometimes.
So this whole deep dive, it's been really unsettling.
It has. It makes you question everything.
It does. But it's important to talk about these things.
Totally. We need to be aware of the risks.
We need to advocate for ourselves.
We do. So as we wrap things up here, what's the one big thing you want our listeners to take away from all of this?
Be proactive.
Be proactive.
Ask questions. Do your research. Don't be afraid to get a second opinion.
Exactly. Your health is your responsibility.
It is.
You have to be informed and empowered.
And trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is.
That's so important. Yeah, don't ignore those red flags.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener.
It has.
I think we all need to be more vigilant about our healthcare.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. Stay curious, stay safe.
And keep diving deep, everyone.
Until next time.